But, you know, if we don't get moving, they're going to eat our lunch.
All right, President Biden yesterday warning that China will eat our lunch. This after speaking with Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time as president on Wednesday night.
But it's a sentiment that's in stark contrast with Biden's statements on the campaign trail. Here is that.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the east.
A very different tone there. Our panelist is going to react to that. We've got Republican strategist John Thomas joining us live. We also have Wendy Patrick, host of the KCBQ Radio, The Answer, and immigration attorney Dino Scaros. He is the author of this book here. It is titled Trumped Up Charges. Good to see all three of you here. Wendy, I'll jump to you right off the rip here. What do you make of just the contrast you've seen of Biden on the campaign trail, essentially pushing back on China eating our lunch, to what you've seen yesterday with his 2-hour phone call with President Xi saying they will eat our lunch?
Well, Sean, I think that the president's view is that we're in a competition with China, and he's clear-eyed about the depth of that challenge. And so the conversation he had with President Xi was certainly a reflection of that.
All right, I apologize. I didn't mean for the sound to play there. But Wendy, back to what you were saying there, your response.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, what Jen Psaki sort of corroborated what the rest of us were wondering is what happened during that call that basically led President Biden to re-strategize his approach to dealing with China. Just in time for Valentine's Day weekend, you wonder whether or not he's recognizing there may be no love lost between these two world leaders. And that sentiment really seeped into the comments he's making afterwards, but not as much as one would expect, since he still says he's going to play the long game. He talks about being vague in a bit about, oh, we're going to have to do some strategy at home, we're going to partner and regroup with our allies. But what does all that mean? After just signing a flurry of executive orders, it seems like he wants to think a little bit more before moving forward on how to change our relationships with China.
Yeah, and of course, you know, keeping China held accountable obviously is a key focus in dealing with the coronavirus. But also, John, it does make you wonder what U.S.-China relations will look like under a Biden administration. When you think about his approach, what are you anticipating?
Yeah, this is one of those moments where you can see that the president had a sobering phone call. It was a real wake up for him that, oh my gosh, China is eating us for lunch. They're ahead of us in many regards. Economically, they're catching up to us militarily, and they're ripping us off on issues of the economy and others. Look, the problem is Joe Biden has boxed himself into a corner because on the campaign trail, he ruthlessly attacked and belittled President Trump for talking tough and sticking it to China and saying that was a terrible policy choice. So now that he's taken that action off the table, there really isn't much for Biden to do except for probably roll over.
Dino, most critics will say, look, I don't mind if you're shifting your tone. Biden said, you know, what he said about China, essentially being fine with it in 2018. Now he shifted in 2021. That's okay. But the question would come, what was said on a 2-hour phone call that completely changed the tone, Dino?
I don't even think that Biden so much changed his tone as that he is a career politician, and so he talks out of both sides of his mouth. One of the main reasons Donald Trump was elected was because he wasn't a politician, and whatever people want to say about him, he kept his promises at a higher rate than any president I can remember. And I think, but I'm a patriot. I'm an American. Joe Biden is my president. I'm not going to call him any nasty names like they did to Trump. However, he is a fumbler. He makes it up as he goes along. If it wasn't for Barack Obama, he never would have been president because he tried many times and polled in single digits. So he's just very mediocre. And I don't know if it's so much the phone call that changed his mind, other than he will give the comfort food answer as a politician, depending on the audience. And so I'm not surprised that he's flip-flopping.
Wendy, do you believe the Biden administration views China as our greatest adversary?
Well, Emma, it's hard to know what they believe because we don't have the clear-cut answers we had under the Trump administration. The president was very clear about exactly what he thought about our allies and our adversaries. So far, we don't have that clarity. And Jen Psaki can't clean it up. God bless her. She's got a tough job. But after some of President Biden's comments, she really can't clarify what he thinks about the Chinese leader. And Emma and Sean, we are thinking that President Biden himself has already come to a decision. Not so sure, especially not after a 2-hour phone call. Likely, if he's talking about playing a long game and coming up with strategy, this will be a wait-and-see approach.
John, it's a very delicate balance that you've seen this administration when handling with China, with President Xi. You saw Jen Psaki earlier saying the administration, the White House, not in a rush. We are in no rush to develop a strategy to counter the CCP. They're taking a strategic approach. Those were her words there. What do you make of that when analyzing the message given to the American people in addressing China, the CCP, and President Xi?
Well, it's a terrible way to broadcast strength to the rest of the world. If you have to be clear and consistent with your priorities, and the problem is the president's real priorities, he has broadcasted them. They're fighting climate change. They're ending this idea of systemic racism. That's what the president is focusing on. Meanwhile, when China's, as Biden says, is eating us or going to eat us for lunch, they're already a step ahead of us, and they don't respect anything but consistency and a firm hand. Look, this is going to end terribly, and I'm deeply concerned for not just the future of America, but the rest of the world.
Panelists, stick around. We've got more to cover here. That is John Thomas, Wendy Patrick, Dino Scaros. We'll see you on the other side of this.
Restricting the right of Americans to travel freely throughout our country while allowing illegal aliens to pour across the southern border unmolested would be a ridiculous but very damaging farce.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis there pushing back on this threat of a travel restriction yesterday, saying that the move to do so is uncalled for, especially against the backdrop of relaxing restrictions on the U.S.-Mexico border.
DeSantis even went so far as to call it, quote, purely political attack on the people of Florida, and also saying it would be unconstitutional. Our panel is back with us now to discuss. John Thomas, Wendy Patrick, and Dino Scaros. And Dino, we'll go to you first. I want to read everyone the words from the Biden administration in regards to their relationship with Florida here, saying that essentially this is a war. And we are at battle with the virus. War is messy and unpredictable, and all options are on the table, one official had said. Dino, does this appear to be political for you, again, this targeting of the state of Florida?
This is a combination of political and also what I've been saying all along, that they don't know what they're doing when it comes to the virus. That's why I don't care who shows up on TV, whether it's Fauci, whether it's somebody else. Nobody knows anything. And the question that I would ask every human being is, how long are we going to do this? If they give us a target date of January 25th, 2035, and then we can take our masks off, are we going to do this for another 14 years? At what point are we going to say enough is enough? And I'm not saying it should be tomorrow, but it's a question people should ask themselves. Have we really, as a human race, just resigned and said, okay, this is how we are going to live for eternity? That's the question people are not asking. But I agree with Governor DeSantis that it is hypocritical to restrict travel from state to state of Americans, which is a constitutional right, and yet have porous borders where persons here illegally, continue to enter and stay illegally.
Speaking with a Florida State rep here on this show, we were told Florida is handling the pandemic relatively well, with their numbers decreasing, on the decline. But on CNN months earlier, they hammered home how Florida would become a, quote, house on fire. Watch.
Florida is ripe for another large outbreak. What they've done is opened up everything as if nothing had ever happened there. And you and I could be talking probably in 8 to 10 weeks, and I will likely bet that Florida will be a house on fire.
Wendy, To point out, that's not entirely true because there are districts that have their own rules, regulations, i.e. Miami-Dade County and others, that can impose stricter restrictions based on the science, if you will, if the numbers are higher in these areas and not in other areas. Bottom line, though, Florida continues to get hit. Now we're talking about restricting travel to Florida. Florida is handling the pandemic just fine right now. Wendy, sorry.
Oh, sure. Singling out the Sunshine State yet again. That is what Governor DeSantis is complaining about. One wonders why. Why the Sunshine State? Why Florida? Particularly, Sean, in light of what you just pointed out, the data doesn't appear to back up these restrictions. You want to make sure that the restrictions are based on statistics, not politics. That sums up DeSantis's complaint, that it doesn't appear that it's data-driven restrictions. It's got to be math. These measures have to be really tied to what they're seeing in the state. And if so, why then don't other states that are similarly situated in terms of an infection rate, in terms of the prevalence of the UK variant, even though supposedly the vaccinations will take care of that just the same way they take care of the other strains, why do we have to treat Florida differently? You'll notice, however, that Jen Psaki is not doubling down on this idea that Florida will be penalized, which makes me believe perhaps they're going to second guess or rethink that strategy.
We will see. Governor DeSantis, in the meantime, often points out what he describes as media bias against conservatives and Republicans, especially after, of course, the Super Bowl celebrations held in Tampa. Here's what he had to say.
You don't care as much if it's a, quote, peaceful protest, and then it's fine. You don't care as much if they're celebrating a Biden election. You only care about if it's people that you don't like.
John, we've showed countless examples of, again, crowds that are okay celebrating one thing and crowds celebrating another that are not okay. Does the governor have a point here?
Yeah, he's absolutely bang on in terms of the bias here. During last year when Black Lives Matter were destroying small businesses and towns all over the United States, they were mostly peaceful protests as the media would describe them, and even though they'd show the videos would clearly show that buildings were on fire. No, this is pure and simple. The mainstream media has become an apparatus of the Democratic Party. They are a support vehicle for Democrats. And it's sickening, and unfortunately, we see it time and time again. The hypocrisy is real, and good on Governor DeSantis for calling it what it is, and it's just media bias.
Dino, your thoughts on the governor's pushback, calling out the bias to the media, to the reporters?
Well, the media has been committing journalistic malpractice for decades now. And I agree with what John said. I mean, the media is basically political comfort food to its audience, the mainstream media in general, with rare exceptions. And that's what my book, Trumped Up Charges, was all about, pointing out blatant media bias against Trump, but it's not just against Trump. I do believe it is against Florida, DeSantis. They hate the fact that DeSantis is becoming a rising star, and they are wary of all rising stars. I mean, they continue to impeach and try a president who's out of office because they are petrified that he might make a comeback. So this is what it's a slow, methodical attack on whom they perceive to be rising stars. I live in Florida, and it's all about being sensible. If I may, I have a prop here. It's a colander, and this colander is like a mask that's not an N95 mask, because most people with a piece of cloth on their face who think they're doing the right thing are just really trying to hold water in a colander. Unless it's an N95, it doesn't do that much good. It's a lot of symbolism over substance, but again, it is the media bias that has really eroded the canons of journalism.
Well, Dino, Dr. Fauci would just tell you to wear 2 masks or potentially 3 just to cover all the holes.
Yeah.
All right, our panelists, Dino Scaras, Wendy Patrick, John Thomas, always great talking to you guys on a Friday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks. You too.